Okay, so you're ready to tackle Ephesians 2, 1-3. Right. But you want to move beyond that typical dead in trespasses and sins thing.
Yeah.
Because honestly, your congregation's probably heard that a ton.
Oh, definitely.
So we dug into a bunch of sermons on this passage. And we were looking for those really unique angles that pastors have taken.
Sounds interesting.
And we found some real gems, I'm telling you.
I bet.
It's amazing how many different ways pastors have illustrated being spiritually dead.
Right. It's like we get it.
We were dead in our sins.
Yeah.
But how do you make that feel real to people? You know what I
How do
mean?
you make it visceral? Yeah, it can't just be this abstract theological concept.
Exactly.
All right.
So New Bethel Baptist Church, they went with a medical analogy.
Yeah.
They compared sin to like a terminal diagnosis. It's not that we're a little spiritually under the weather. We are dead.
Right.
End of story.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's powerful.
That
Gets through all the fog, and it really drives home how serious it is to be apart from Christ.
Absolutely.
And then there's CSFBC. They went a completely different route.
Oh, really?
They told this bizarre, true story about a guy named Jeremy Bennett.
Okay. I'm all ears.
All right. So Jeremy was really dedicated to this organization, but he died.
Oh, no.
And his family, bless their hearts,
Yeah.
they decided to keep his ashes
Oh, wow.
and bring them to board meetings.
Wait, what? Seriously?
They brought his remains to meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was their way of honoring his commitment, I guess.
But the church used this,
It's a strange story.
I know, kind of a weird story,
Yeah.
but they use it to make a point. You can be physically present somewhere, even involved, on the surface,
Right.
but be completely spiritually inactive.
Like a ghost.
Yeah, just drifting through life.
Exactly.
Oh, that's an image that will stick with people.
It will.
Okay, now, First Baptist O'Fallon, they took a slightly different approach. They focused on those outside forces that contribute to our spiritual death.
Okay.
Things like the culture around us, the influence of the enemy,
Yeah.
even our own desires that lead us astray.
It's so easy to forget about that.
It is to
Yeah.
think that it's all our fault.
Right. Like, it's all internal.
Yeah,
But the truth is,
both, right.
yeah, we're up against some pretty strong forces
right.
that are working to keep us away from God.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's not just an internal battle.
It's an external battle, too.
It is.
Okay, enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk about grace.
Yeah, please.
Okay, how some pastors used analogies to talk about grace.
Love a good analogy.
Me too.
All right, let's hear it.
Life. Church Open Network went with a classic. John Newton.
Oh, yeah, the slave trader turned hymn writer.
If anyone embodies that radical change that comes with salvation,
John Newton does.
that's John Newton.
for sure.
The guy wrote Amazing Grace.
Talk about a life.
Talk about a life transformed by the gospel, right?
Yep.
And that's exactly the point they were making.
Yeah.
Newton's story shows that stark difference between spiritual death and new life.
Totally.
It's like going from pitch black to this bright light.
Wow.
Okay, but get this. Real-life Christian church went with a more modern and honestly hilarious analogy.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
They compared trying to cover up our spiritual deadness with good works to middle schoolers dousing themselves in Axe body spray.
Laughs. Oh, I love that.
It's so true, though.
It's so true, right?
We try to mask the problem
Yeah.
instead of actually dealing with it.
I do. We do.
But just like that overpowering smell of cheap cologne can't cover up all that awkwardness.
Right.
No amount of good deeds can fix spiritual death.
You can't.
Only true resurrection through Christ can do that.
That's it. That's the key.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's Exposit the Word. They went with a much more tender image.
Yeah.
They talked about a shepherd reviving a frozen lamb.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It really captures the tenderness and power of God's grace.
It does.
You can practically feel the shepherd's care as he brings that lamb back to life.
And it really speaks to how God is not this distant, uncaring being.
No, he's not.
He's so involved in our lives.
He's the good shepherd.
Yeah.
Seeking out his lost sheep.
I love that.
Me too.
And we need to hear that.
We do.
Especially in a world that can feel so cold.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to change gears a bit.
Okay.
Talk about how some of these pastors tackled a misconception about salvation.
Okay.
This idea that it's the finish line, you
You're
know.
like, once you're saved, you're good.
Yeah, like you're done.
But
But it's not.
it's a starting line.
It is.
Right.
Christ's Way Church had this great analogy of a Christian streaker
Okay.
who's running around with only the helmet of salvation.
Oh, I like that.
It's funny, but it really makes you think.
It does.
Like, are we really equipped for the race?
Right? We can't just coast.
We can't coast.
No.
Salvation is the beginning.
It's the start of a lifelong journey.
Yeah, a lifelong journey of faith.
Exactly.
And becoming more like Christ.
It's less about reaching a destination.
It is.
And more about the journey itself.
It is. And
Yeah.
South Lake Nazarene brought up a really interesting concept here. Prevenient grace.
Okay, for those of us who aren't theology nerds,
Sure.
write that down.
So basically, prevenient grace is God's grace at work in our lives before we even come to faith.
Whoa.
It's what allows us to choose him.
So it's not just about being saved from death.
Right.
It's about being able to choose life in the first place.
Exactly.
Mind-blowing.
It is pretty amazing.
Okay, so how does all this translate into everyday life?
Right. How do we actually live this out?
Swamp Mennonite Church used a really down-to-earth example.
Okay.
They talked about Gary Chapman,
Oh, the 5 love languages guy.
the one and only.
Interesting.
They shared this story about Chapman extending grace to his wife
How so?
by closing a drawer she always left open.
Oh, that's sweet.
Right.
Yeah,
It's such a small act,
it is.
but it shows that he puts her needs before his own.
It does.
Grace doesn't have to be this grand gesture.
No, it doesn't.
It can be in the everyday moments,
Totally.
in the choices we make to love and serve others.
Exactly.
And then to really hit home the point about the power of grace, WFCOG used this amazing visual.
Okay.
They said God's grace is like a dazzling jewel on black velvet.
Oh, that's powerful.
The darkness only makes the jewel shine brighter.
It does.
It makes you think, what if Ephesians 2:1-3 isn't just about reminding us of our past spiritual death? What if it's also about recognizing God's grace in our lives?
That's a great question to consider.
It is.
Yeah.
That grace that brings us back to life
Uh-huh.
and empowers us to live out his purpose.
Absolutely. So we've seen all these illustrations, right? Bringing Ephesians 2:1-3 to life.
Yeah, those are good.
But now let's get into the passage itself.
Okay.
Really unpack the meaning.
Because sometimes it's those little nuances, things you miss on a quick read,
Exactly.
that really open up the passage.
Yeah, like Life Church Open Network. They really dug into that Greek word for transgressions.
Oh, interesting.
They pointed out it doesn't just mean making mistakes. It implies this rebellion against God.
So it's more than just messing up.
It is.
It's like actively choosing to disobey.
a conscious choice to go our own way.
That changes things.
He does. It really does.
Christ Way Church did something similar with the word dead.
Oh, yeah.
They said in the original Greek, it means being totally separated from God.
Like a severed connection.
It's not just that we're bad people who need fixing.
Right.
We're spiritually dead.
We can't fix ourselves.
No, we need God's grace.
We do.
We need him to bring us back to life.
It's like a spiritual heart transplant,
Wow.
not just some lifestyle changes.
That's a good one.
And speaking of new life,
Yeah.
a lot of these sermons talked about purpose.
Okay, so we're alive in Christ,
Uh-huh.
but then what?
What are we supposed to do?
Right.
Mount Pleasant Baptist Church talked about being God's workmanship,
Okay.
created for good works.
So salvation isn't just about going to heaven.
No, it's about living a life that honors God.
Like we're given this gift of new life,
Yeah.
and then we're sent out to do something with it.
Exactly.
Those good works everyone talks about.
Right, but Real Life Christian Church made a good point.
What's that?
Good works aren't about earning salvation.
They're not.
They're a result of it.
Okay.
It's like fruit growing on a tree.
Oh, I like that.
You don't force the fruit.
It just appears naturally.
Exactly.
So good works come from our transformation,
yes,
not the other way around.
precisely.
Exposit to the story. The word pointed out something about the structure of the passage.
Really? Like what?
In the original Greek, Ephesians 2:1-10 is one long sentence.
Wow, that's interesting.
It all flows together.
From death to life.
It's a complete picture of what God does in us.
And through us.
And to emphasize our transformation,
Mm-hmm.
they highlighted these three Greek words.
Which ones?
They describe our union with Christ. Synsupoio, synagero, and synkathizo.
I'm going to be honest, my Greek is a bit rusty.
Mine too.
What do they mean?
Made alive together with,
Okay.
raised up together with,
Uh-huh.
and seated together with.
Wow.
Paul actually created these words,
He did.
combining existing Greek
To
words.
make a new concept.
And the key is that togetherness.
Oh, I see.
We're united with Christ and each other.
In this new life.
We're part of something bigger.
We are.
Not just individuals.
Like threads in a tapestry,
I like that.
all woven together by God's grace.
Beautiful.
And it's not just about what happened when we were saved.
No.
It's our reality now.
We're constantly being made alive, raised up, seated with Christ.
This ongoing process.
So it's not just about crossing the finish line.
Right.
It's about running the race.
And growing closer to Christ.
Every single day.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to that question. How do we live this out?
Yeah, how does it all translate into action?
Because it's easy to get lost in the theology.
It is.
And forget about the practical stuff.
Right, but these pastors didn't shy away from that.
They didn't.
Like Swamp Mennonite Church with that story about Gary Chapman.
Oh yeah, the drawer.
Closing his wife's drawer.
Might seem like a small thing.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful example of grace in relationships.
It is.
Choosing to love and serve.
Even in the little things.
Okay, but how do we live out grace in a world that doesn't always get it?
That's a good question.
Right.
And First Baptist O'Fallon talked about that.
They did.
About the influence of culture,
Mm-hmm.
how we need to be careful about what we're absorbing.
It's so easy to just blend in,
It is.
go with the flow,
Yeah.
compromise our beliefs.
But we're called to be different.
We are
Salt and light.
in a dark world.
And that takes courage.
It does.
Even if people don't understand.
Even if they make fun of us.
And that's why it's so important to understand spiritual death. Absolutely.
Because if we don't know the enemy's tactics,
Yeah,
we're easy targets.
we are.
We can get complacent
Thinking everything's fine,
when it's not.
and we drift further from God.
It's like going into battle with no armor.
You're going to lose.
We need to be prepared
Put on the full armor of God
and rely on his grace.
to keep us going.
Okay, remember that jewel on black velvet?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
God's grace shines brightest against our sin.
In those moments when we see our brokenness,
We see how much we need him.
that's when his grace is the most amazing.
The darker the background.
The more radiant the jewel.
What if Ephesians 2, 1-3 isn't just about our past?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's a call to recognize God's grace right now
Grace that rescues us.
and empowers us to live for him?
It's a powerful thought.
It is. So we've looked at these creative approaches, right? But I kind of want to zoom out now.
Okay.
Look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What's the overall message Paul's trying to get across here?
It's the gospel, really. It's redemption, transformation, grace.
It's almost too much to handle.
It is.
It's like we're right there for the biggest rescue mission ever.
And God's the hero.
God's the hero. Absolutely.
Several sermons talked about God's character, like what led him to do this for us.
Right.
Exposit the word. They talked about the Greek words for God's nature,
Oh, interesting.
like plausios,
Finding.
abundant,
Okay.
and eleos.
Active
Love.
compassion.
So it's not that he can be merciful.
No.
It's that it's who he is,
It's part of him.
overflowing with.
And this grace, it's not passive.
Yeah.
It changes us completely.
From the inside out?
Life view.
Yeah.
Church Open Network had this point about how realizing our guilt,
Yeah.
that's actually the start of experiencing grace.
It's like we have to hit rock bottom.
to really see how bad it is.
Yeah.
Before we can grasp that lifeline, God throws us.
And once we grab it,
It's not just about being saved.
no,
It's about this whole new life.
that spiritual resurrection everyone talks about.
It's being made new. Like, we get a brand new set of lungs.
To breathe in God's grace.
And with those new lungs,
a new purpose.
we're not lost anymore.
We're walking in the light.
And remember, Prevenient grace.
Yeah, from South Lake Nazarene.
God working in our lives even before we believe.
It's like we're invited to this dance,
I like that.
letting God lead us.
That's the beauty of the gospel
It's hope, redemption.
for anyone.
Anyone who'll take it.
And as we let God work in us,
We become proof of his love.
like living billboards for the gospel.
Showing others where our joy comes from.
Because that's what it's about, right?
Sharing this with everyone.
Helping them experience the same thing.
That transformation.
So as you go back to your sermon prep,
Yeah.
think about this. What if Ephesians 2, 1-3 isn't just theology? What if it's a love letter from God,
Wow.
inviting us into this relationship?
That changes everything.
Let that sink in,
Let it fuel you.
because the world needs this.
Now more than ever.
And you, yes, you get to share it.